Booktube, how are you doing? Today I'm going to do the book Postscript tag, kind of end of the year reflection really on reading and stuff like that, and it's the last week I can do it. It's at the very end of 2021, so I thought I'd squeeze it in there. Before I get into it, there are a few things I'd like to show you and talk to you about. The first and most important thing is 2 new additions to the household. Been here a few weeks and I haven't had a chance to sort of film them or anything like that for you, so but here they are. It's Pippin and Gandalf, 2 little gerbils. The grey one is Gandalf and the gingery one is Pippin, but yeah, here they are. So yes, that's them, yeah, they seem to be warming up to us and pretty chilled now, which is quite nice. And they've already sussed out their tunnels and their little systems, which is really cool. But anyway, and another thing is just to do with the videos themselves at the moment. Maybe some of you have noticed they're a bit quieter than normal. I'm trying to do what I can to speak a little bit louder. I'm not sure how much that will help. And I'll try and work out a way to get them louder. I still haven't quite worked it out, but yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. So yeah, turn the volume down before the next video. And then it's been Christmas since the last time I made a video, so I thought I'd share some of the bookish things that turned up. Well, one non-bookish thing, but quite cool thing is this mug. Probably the poshest looking mug I've ever had in in my house. But yeah, quite posh. But yeah, quite a few, well, a couple of books and some book related things. I got given a copy of Walden by Thoreau, which is quite cool. I've never read it, heard a fair bit about it, some sort of mixed things, but yeah, it's something I wanted to read at some point, so I'm glad that I've got it, and I'll try and make some space for it in 2022. Another one I'm going to have to make a fair bit of space for in 2022, but have some fairly serious plans for reading, is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, which I have never attempted to read, but I kind of had my mind set on reading it in 2022, so I was very glad to receive this as a Christmas present. And it's really nice floppy edition, which I think for a really big book it's nice when it's floppy, and at least for me I find it much more satisfying, I guess. And then another book, just sort of a book for the house really, is Humans, which is I think like an offshoot of like the Humans of New York thing. I don't know whether that was like an internet thing, maybe like a Facebook thing, I can't remember. But this is like from all over the world, so it's like little human stories, so kind of coffee table thing. Nice thing to have just floating around the house. And then not a book, but definitely book related, is the film adaptation of Whom the Bell Tolls, which is my favourite Hemingway film. Hemingway book, but I haven't seen the film, so I was very excited to get gifted this year, starring Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman. So yeah, this should be hopefully good, but I haven't really heard anything about it, so we'll see. And then the last thing here is this jigsaw puzzle of the world of Charles Dickens. So yeah, quite excited for a little jigsaw puzzle. I'm sure someone else on BookTube has one of these, and I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure I saw it on BookTube somewhere. But yeah, it escapes me who it was. But yeah, very excited to get that. I think my sister got given the Shakespeare version, I think, which was quite cool. So yeah, I'm sure we'll end up helping each other at some point with them. But there we go, there's some of the bookish Christmas gifts, but now I'll jump over into the tag. Okay, so the book Postscript tag, I'm not very good at saying that word. You can see it, I'm sure. So it was created by Adam over at Memento Mori, and I was tagged by Kelly over at Books I'm Not Reading. This was a tag I really wanted to do this year and then kind of forgot about it, so I kind of remembered then when I saw Kelly doing it, and she tagged me and loads of other people. So hopefully there'll be a good bunch of us doing this tag today on Tuesday, and just squeezing it in at the tail end of the year. Yeah, so thank you for the tag. Let's get into it. So the first question here is the longest book you read this year and the book that took you the longest. So the longest book I read was Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Really loved reading Bleak House. It was just a whole world in this book that I just loved being in. And I read it over the period of a month, and yeah, I can just remember just wanting to get back to it all the time. It was an absolute pleasure to read, and this edition, the actual book itself, finishes on page 989. So yeah, I believe that's the longest book I read this year. And then the book that took me the longest, the actual main portion of this book, isn't quite as long as Bleak House. It's quite a heavy book though. It's Red Comet, The Short and Blazing Life of Sylvia Plath. Again, this was an absolute pleasure to read. I plan to read this really slowly through the summer, over a period of 3 months. I think I read it in about a month and a half maybe, because once I was a couple of hundred pages in, I just wanted to keep going. But yeah, I really, really love this book, and yeah, I'm sure I'll be revisiting that again in the future. And then number 2 is a book you read this year that was outside your comfort zone. And for me, this was States of the Body, Produced by Love by Nisha Ramaya. And I was really looking forward to reading this book. I think maybe that's partly why I was so confounded by this book, was because I sort of built up expectations for it that were so different to what it actually is. I was expecting it to be much more lyrical and much more personal than it was, whereas actually it's quite opaque, quite elusive, quite confusing, and I think quite deliberately so. I don't think you're supposed to really understand it, you're supposed to experience it, I think. Yeah, there were just lots of sections where I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I didn't, not because of references or anything like that, but just mainly just to do with how she was saying it, to do with the actual structure of each line. They didn't really make any grammatical sense. There was nothing to sort of grapple your emotions to, so everything was sort of floating around. So yeah, I was kind of confounded by it, totally outside of my comfort zone with this book, which is not to say I didn't enjoy it, and it's definitely not to say that I don't want to read it again, because I absolutely want to read this book again. And yeah, hopefully we'll dip into it a few more times in the future. So number 3 is, how many books did you reread? And I reread 2 books this year. I've reread a couple of like short stories and things like that as well that I'd read before, but for actual full books all the way through, it's 2 books. And so number 1 is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was a total joy. It was, yeah, I'm totally obsessed with Douglas Adams when I was a kid. And yeah, read this book when I was, I think, a teenager. And yeah, it was just great to get back into it. Things about it I'd forgotten, because I know the radio series really well. The sort of radio drama of it. I know that back to front, and there was a British TV series of it as well. And then there was the film. So I know them probably better than the book, so it was good to get back to the book. And actually, when I got to the end of it, I really wanted to read the rest, the other 4 books, which I've never done before. So yeah, hopefully I'll pick them up soon and get back to them. And then the other book I reread was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, another author I was totally obsessed with when I was a kid, and yeah, reading this just reminded me why I was so obsessed. Yeah, I don't know. I think Tolkien is really my happy place. I love the way he writes. The tone of this book was so, I don't know, I found it so warm and cozy, which was quite nice at this time of the year. And I'd forgotten just how warm and cozy it was. And I'd forgotten that he was kind of writing this book almost as if either that you as the reader are in Middle Earth later on and you're learning about these events, or maybe even that Middle Earth is like a lost version of our world. There are kind of two ways you might read The Hobbit, and I'd forgotten that about The Hobbit, and yeah, that surprised me, and I found that quite interesting as I was reading it. And this was, yeah, for number 4, your favourite reread of the year. It was The Hobbit, and hopefully there'll be more rereading next year, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Then number 5 is a book you read for the first time that you look forward to rereading in the future. And I picked 2 books for this because I found it too hard. Almost every other book I read this year, if not more, I wanted to reread. Yeah, I picked 2, and they're both quite different. So they have kind of their own reasons why I would like to reread them, but in some ways it's kind of similar as to why I'd like to reread them as well. So the first one is Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. I read this just back in October. Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse was doing a read along, and again I read this over the period of the month, and yeah, I suppose my experience of it was very similar to Bleak House. It was just a world that I wanted to get back to. It was an author's voice that I just wanted to keep hearing. It was really lovely, and I think there's so much sort of going on in the book that I hadn't picked up on. That there's certainly some things, some patterns, some sort of sounds, some passages that were really beautifully written that I loved, and yeah, I just want to read it again and pick up on more of that and experience the stuff that I loved all over again, because it was, yeah, a really tremendous experience. And then, yeah, quite a different book, be the Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa. Again, I think I read this maybe over a few weeks, maybe a month. And I think I just want to read this quite slowly and maybe quite randomly, because I just read it from cover to cover. But I'd quite like to have a go at just reading it sort of randomly, and having it as a sort of bedside table book, although I've never really been that kind of person, really. I've never read from bed without falling asleep. But, you know, that book that you just sort of randomly open every now and then, when you want a change of pace. So I might try that. Maybe not next year. Maybe I'll wait to forget it a little bit more, so that maybe some of the things I read the first time will surprise me and I'll think of them differently, perhaps. But yeah, I want to reread this one again. And then moving on, a favourite single short story or novella that you read this year. I didn't read tons of short stories or novellas this year. There are only a handful to play with, but I think my favourite and the one I was sort of the more impressed with was the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, which I don't know where you'd put it. I suppose in this edition it's about 94 pages, so maybe that's straying into novella territory. So it's definitely sort of long short story. I suppose the font is quite big in this edition. But yeah, I was just really impressed with this. I can remember getting to the second page and realizing, okay, we've reached our premise of the story already. So yeah, what's going to happen now? Where's this going to go? What's this going to mean for our character? And I was just blown away with the way Kafka handled that situation and saw that situation through. And it was absolutely great, really marvelous. Number 7 is Mass Appeal, a book you liked and would recommend to a wide variety of readers. For me, this was The Hare with Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal, which, yeah, I thought I'd try and get some non-fiction in here, and it's just a sort of family history book really, and he's using these family heirlooms, these Japanese called netsuke is what they're called, if I remember right. Where are they? Yeah, netsuke, and how they're passed through the family as a sort of heirloom. Um, but yeah, just the way he writes is really accessible, but still really, really good and very wholesome, I found. And I think readers from a wide sort of variety would get a fair bit out of this. You know, you could be interested in family dynamics in the history of Europe through the 19th and 20th centuries. You might be into art or into, you know, sort of that sort of stuff, maybe into how sort of Western and Eastern cultures intersect, and sort of the relationships between them. And all of that is in this book, which is, yeah, quite cool. And I would, yeah, definitely recommend it. No matter what sort of stuff you read, I think you could find something moving or interesting in here. Number 8 is Specialised Appeal, a book you liked but would be hesitant to recommend to just anyone. And for this, I go with The Invention of Morale by Adolfo Bioy Casares, which was, yeah, again, one of my favourite books this year. Very short. I suppose this is sort of novella length as well. This is, yeah, just over 100 pages, like 101 pages. So not very long to read. One of the reasons I'd be hesitant to recommend this to someone would be probably like the first half of it is really, really slow. And I quite enjoyed it, but I can imagine there'd be quite a lot of readers who would be put off by it, would get quite bored of it quite quickly. And I suppose the premise of it, or certain ideas of it, I don't know, some people might find a bit creepy or a bit odd, so I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but I really loved it. And again, it's another one I want to reread. Most of the books, no, all the books in this stack I want to reread. And then is number 9, which is Reflect on Your Year as a Bookish content creator. So on sort of goals met, good/bad memories, favourite videos you made, stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know, for me, it's been my first year making videos on BookTube. It's been really, really fun. It's quite nice seeing, I don't know, having these people who are sort of faces on the screen, and they talk and you listen, and maybe occasionally you leave a comment, and then every now and then, you know, once you've started making videos, every now and then they leave a comment on your videos, and that's quite nice. That's quite that community aspect of BookTube I've really loved, and I'm looking forward to that carrying on. And maybe one of the other really sort of big things that something I just wouldn't have expected happening in my reading year this year would be buddy reads, and group reads and read-alongs and things like that, because I've always been a very private reader. I'm a very introverted person, straying to like just being totally antisocial. And yes, my reading's always been very private and just for myself, just what I'm interested in at that time. And it's actually been really cool to branch out a bit, and to read things with other people, to hear other people's thoughts. And like now I'm part of a little poetry book club with David Wiley, and we've got Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, who's been reading along. And yeah, I never would have thought I would have been doing something like that, you know, and actually allowing my reading routine to open up to other people's suggestions, to other people's routines. That's been actually much more fun than I would have thought of it being. So yeah, that's been one of my favourite things, and I'm looking forward. I've got a few things like that that I've committed to in the new year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And then the last thing to do is to tag people. And it's like the last week. It's the last Tuesday, and I can't remember who has and hasn't done this or been tagged. So I'm just going to say, if you haven't done it and you want to do it, if you want to squeeze it in, go ahead and do it. Get it, get it in this last week. I'm sure you can do it. So yeah, there we have it. I'm getting a bit tired now, so I'm gonna go have I'm gonna get this video up and then have a little sleep, and then I'll see you all sometime soon, hopefully before the new year. But yeah,